Leica SL3. I was able to take the camera on several different shoots and different outings over the last 7 days or so. And I definitely have some thoughts regarding this camera and the system overall. I've never used an SL3 or any of those cameras before. I've only used the Q and M series cameras from Leica, so I was very excited to actually put this camera through its paces. As I do with most camera reviews on this channel, I don't like talking about the specs too much. I'm much more focused on how the camera actually performs. I think in today's world, pretty much every camera that you're going to use is amazing, and they all are pretty incredible at what they do. It's much more important with how the camera actually feels and how it works, how it actually feels in the hands and how you're able to actually get the images that you want. The first thing that I have to say first and foremost is these files are absolutely beautiful to work with, not only on the back of the camera screen, but also when I was editing in Lightroom. Very, very impressed with how beautiful these raw files look. Obviously, I shoot mainly medium format on my Fuji GFX, and I felt like these files were pretty up to par with the GFX files in terms of sharpness and depth and color. I was really impressed with how sharp these were. Now, as I previously mentioned, I had two different lenses for this camera to test out, the 24-70 and also the 90mm f2 Apo lens. And both of these lenses are very sharp in their own right, but I feel like there's something special about that 90mm. I was able to take some pretty close-up portraits and actually use this lens to its full extent. And when you stopped all the way down to f2, it's pretty wild how sharp this is and how much depth and bokeh you get. There's an amazing fall off to this lens, and the bokeh looks nice and natural. I find that the separation between the background and the foreground looks pretty amazing. Leica always kind of seems to nail that with their lenses, and this was no different, especially the 90mm was really impressive to use. The 24-70 was also very sharp. It felt more like an all-around lens. It felt a lot more familiar to me in my hands. I've used a lot of 24-70s over the years, or 24-70 equivalents, and this felt right at home to me. I think the 90mm felt a little bit out of the ordinary. Maybe that's why I kind of gravitated towards it so much. But I found both of these lenses to be extremely sharp and very useful. Something else I was very impressed with is how easy these files were to edit. And I've definitely struggled in the past with editing Leica DNG files. For some reason, they've been a lot more challenging than other file types for me to edit. But I did not find that at all here with the SL3 files. I'm not sure if there's some difference between those and the Q2 or Q3 files. Probably not, to be honest, but I found it to be really easy to edit and be able to pull the colors out of the files that I was looking for. I brought this camera on a number of different portrait shoots over the last week, 3 in total. I shot some portraits out in Malibu and also some hiking photos up in Angeles Crest. And I was also able to bring this camera along on an actual job yesterday, which was really fun up in Ojai, shooting some new gear and portraits for Alltrails, which is a client of mine. And throughout all 3 of these different shoots, I was really impressed with the autofocus and the tracking capabilities of this camera. Obviously, the Fuji GFX is not very strong in that department, so anything really outside of that is probably going to be pretty impressive. But I haven't used a camera like this that tracked so well, and I was able to really easily just shoot motion, no problem at all. Especially when people are walking or moving around, having that eye detection autofocus is extremely helpful, and I loved using that and being able to get some photos that I wouldn't normally get on my GFX. I don't think this camera missed focus once in the entire week of shooting, and that says a lot about Leica's autofocus capabilities and how much they've been able to pack into this beautiful camera. Speaking of which, obviously this is one of the most beautiful cameras on the market. I didn't really realize how gorgeous it was going to be until I got it in my hands, and both the feeling and obviously the aesthetic of the camera are pretty incredible and very, very well made in typical Leica fashion. This camera felt right at home in my hands. I feel like the ergonomics were really nice. I'm very picky about how cameras feel in my hands, and I thought the SL3 felt very nice and easy to use in that way. Now with the SL3, you do get a full frame 60 megapixel sensor. You can also choose different options for megapixels, which I find to be very helpful. Both 36 and 18 megapixel options. I went with 60 for the most part just because I wanted to see the full size DNGs and see what those looked like at 60 megapixels. Very impressed with the depth and the detail of the sensor. Being able to shoot 60 megapixels in such a fast-paced environment if I need to is really incredible. And I had no lag whatsoever while I was shooting, no buffering. I think a lot of that has to do with the CF Express Type B slot, which was very useful. I use CF Express when I can, but not all modern cameras have it. I think they should because of how easy and fast these cards are. They're really reliable, and you're able to shoot a lot more images before the camera even has to buffer. I was able to get almost 60 images without the camera even remotely stopping, and that's pretty wild to say because you're able to get a full sequence of motion and then some, and the camera still works just fine. I was also able to bring the camera along on an afternoon trip to the Getty here in LA, which is one of my favorite places to go shoot. I brought the SL3 along and shot some architecture photos of the sun kind of hitting the buildings. a very beautiful afternoon, and I found myself gravitating towards the 90mm quite a bit on that trip. I just loved the compression of the 90mm lens, and I was able to get some really tight and beautiful shots. Now obviously that lens is really noticeable when you're shooting portraits, but I found it also really nice to shoot architecture and landscape with. The compression of the 90mm is really nice for that kind of stuff as well. So I think the best way to sum up my experience with the SL3 is very easy. This camera was just right out of the box, really simple to use, and very easy to figure out. Leica's menu systems are very simple, and I don't have to dig too much to find what I'm looking for, so I was able to set the camera up the way that I wanted to pretty quickly. Overall, this feels like the most robust camera that I've been able to shoot with from Leica, and I'm really impressed with everything across the board. There's not really anything that I dislike about this camera, and I found my time with it to be very enjoyable, and I was very happy with all of the images I was able to take. Now, obviously, this is an extremely expensive camera system, and I didn't purchase this. I was just sent this camera and a few lenses for just over a week to test out. I feel like I'm so invested in the Fuji ecosystem right now that it's tough to want to switch or have the ability to switch to a brand new camera system. But I will say this is one of the most exciting and polished cameras that I've had the ability to use over the last several years. Props to Leica for making a really beautiful camera that's both functional and beautiful. I think that's a really nice area to toe when you're making professional cameras. I was super impressed with my time with the SL3. Now, if you guys want to take a look at any of the images that I shot in this video, I'll leave a link down in the description to that for you guys to go check out. Thank you so much as always for watching. And before this video wraps up, I did want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace, for sponsoring today's episode. Simply put, Squarespace is just by far the easiest way to build any sort of creative website, whether you're looking to display your work, create gallery pages, sell e-commerce products, or even book appointments. I find the design and layout choices make it extremely easy to kind of make the website that you're looking for with Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace now since the start of my career, and I can't recommend them enough to anyone who's looking to create or start their own website. If you guys want to check out Squarespace for yourself, there'll be a link down in the description to receive 10% off your first website or domain purchase. Thank you so much to Squarespace as always for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.